Hola community, welcome to BlenderToday Live episode 237, 234, like Blender 4. That wasn't planned. It's a new week. We are in this special week where Blender 4.0 alpha goes from the first phase of development, Beacon 1 to Beacon 2. What does it mean in terms of development? Well, in theory, this is the week where developers should stop adding, like when the switch happens on Wednesday, it should be the week where big changes, big features stop coming into the version that we're working on in order to only improve it and stabilize it. That being said, in judging by how it went in a few previous releases, actually some features make it because they are patches that have been worked on for a while, that they have been tested for a while and then we're just waiting. Or maybe they're patches that look larger, but actually code wise they are not as big. They look like a big feature, but maybe it's not that much. So I would say we still have some room for Agent 327. No, wait, sorry. That's a quote from a film. I don't think we have much today to share. There's two big changes in terms of the looks of your scenes, especially if you are using hair and cycles. We do have some new changes in EEVEE Next, some animation updates, and some compositing improvements, as well as user interface and USD. So actually there is some, just not many in number, but really big ones. So without further ado, also remember that we are streaming live, so if you have any questions, please drop them here in the chat. I do have the chat over here, so remember, drop by and leave any questions in the chat or here. It's probably more likely I'm gonna answer them if they show up in the website blender.community. In terms of features, let's start with what's new in animation. A for animation. Match slope slider. Last week we saw a couple of new slider operators for, I think it was the offset and blend. Watch last week's episode. This week we have one more, the match slope slider. So it's easier if you see it in action. In this example, for example, you have the keyframes that they go slightly up or down, and that way you can keep some of the transform, some of the shape of that curve, but keep it also in the direction where it was going. We had the ease, blend to ease, I think it was called, the last week operator. Oops. I hope I didn't smash the microphone. You were wearing headphones. I'm sorry. You know what? Well, for what I'm not sorry, to actually thank Ares for working on this and Christoph for implementing it. But this comes from a patch also from Ares. I think I talked about it last week, or maybe it was in the Spanish version where because Ares he speaks Spanish. We met at the DreamWorks many years ago, and yeah, I think I mentioned it in the Spanish live stream. He's awesome. I'm so glad that some of the features on his add-on that he's been working on for so many years are making it into Blender. So nothing with let there be. Let's go with C for cycles. Two big changes. One of them is regarding hardware. So if you're using integrated graphics from AMD, the Ryzen 7000 CPUs, now you can enable, well, it is going to be possible to render in cycles using HIP, the backend that makes renders faster, basically faster renders. Specifically for the GFX 1036 architecture for AMD Zen 4 APUs. Really welcome changes. Next, well, especially if you have a Ryzen 7000 series. And the next change is the name of this episode. So, have you ever used the Cycles Principal Hair BSDF shader? Have you ever noticed that it was maybe a little noisy, especially when seeing from afar? Well, this is because the shader, the Principal BSDF shader, was sorry, the principal BSDF BSDF shader, the model that was used for that, it was maybe better suited for close-ups, and there is a new one actually by the name of Juan, that Bison, the developer that is sitting here and the studio, that makes it so this one is a far field model, and it works better when it should be less noisy when rendered from afar, and should look should look better overall, and about the same render time. It shouldn't be that much take that longer. So it's, you can see here the difference at this distance. You can see that they look different. The one on the right is the new BSDF, microfacet hair BSDF. In the UI you can find it as, why do I have so many blenders open? I was trying to add my little contributions to Blender this week, so that's why I have so many blenders open. But the shader, the principal hair BSDF shader, now has a toggle to change between Xiang and Huang. These are two models. The first one is the one that the default one that we used to have for close-ups, that is better for working in close-ups, and Huang is a new one by default, is enabled by default, that should be less noisy and look slightly better on renders when it's a bit more from afar. You can tell here that on the left side it's a bit more washed out, the shading, whereas on the right is a lot more contrasty. It looks better. The same on the right. It's the render time is pretty similar. Sometimes it's slightly more, like a second more, sometimes it's actually less. In this case you can tell that it's already less noisy. If you compare, you can actually see my cursor nowadays. Yay. And it should look better overall. And this one in particular, even the color is different. I guess you need to tweak some of the shaders, and I guess also this is one of the reasons why this is in Blender 4.0, because your renders are gonna look different. And in this case you can also see how it preserves better. I think in like internally it's treating the hair, instead of being a cylinder, it's more like an ellipse. Oh, that's why Dalai told me. So it should look better in most situations. Super nice. Next section is E for EEVEE, although we know that EEVEE Next is the next big thing, so actually no news in EEVEE, only in EEVEE Next. I just wanted to mention that this kind of a big update happened last week, Shadow Rendering Refactor. So it's a huge commit, 600 additions, 400 deletions, like a whole refactor for the new shadows in EEVEE Next, just to share the good news that things are happening. From E, we actually jump all the way to M for markers. What to do with markers? Well, this one is a proposal that I actually ran into on right-click select. This was actually added by Bjorn, one of the animators that work on Blender at Blender Studio. He directed Glass Half, and I ran into this because I was looking for double click on right-click select, and I ran into this, renaming timeline markers with double click. And to me that makes so much sense, right? We have double click for renaming everywhere in the user interface. In UI lists, sometimes it's the only way to rename a thing, by double clicking. Actually, we don't expose the name field anywhere. You know, you have to learn that you need to double click. So it only made sense for markers to also be renamed that way. So for markers, you can rename, or the way to rename usually is F2, the same way that you can do for other areas in Blender. But F2 is context specific. So if your mouse is over this area, the marker area, F2 is going to rename the active marker. Now you can also just double click straight into the marker itself, and the first click is going to make it active, or you just double click is going to rename it. So it makes sense. Yay for speed. And yeah, so I ran into this and I thought of making a patch because it was actually pretty straightforward. It was just a matter of just adding the entries to the key map, the default key map, and also the industry compatible key map has been updated as well. So just double click on either of those key maps. Next one. No, well, yeah, well, M, from M we go to N for nodes. New noise features. Add lacunarity and normalize inputs to noise node. This PR adds the lacunarity and normalize inputs to the noise node, similar to the Voronoi node. Voronoi. Oh no, this is the commit that a few weeks ago I started saying Voronoi. Let's continue. The lacunarity input controls the scale factor by which each successive Berlin noise octave is scaled. Alright, so it's a scale factor, which was previously hard-coded to a factor of 2. The noise node normalizes its input to the 0-1 range by default. The normalize option makes it possible for the user to disable that normalization. To keep the behavior consistent with past versions, it is enabled by default. Oh, nice. I want pictures. Where are the pictures? There are explosions for sure. Or maybe I can just add it. So it's in the texture node. So I guess in shading, texture, noise. Oh, there you go. Normalize is now a toggle. And the lacunarity is now exposed in here in the noise texture. Similar to, actually, yeah, it's the same as the Voronoi, right? Yeah, awesome. So now these two, Voronoi and noise texture, match. All right. Thank you, Hoshinova, for working on this. Pretty neat. Hoshinova, I don't know if you watch this live stream, but if you want to be a superhero or heroine, I don't know exactly, but in right-click select, if you sort by top, the top most ever feature, ever liked, ever upvoted feature in Blender, right-click select, is this post that asks for more noise types. The day we can mark this as done, I think I will retire. Well, I can't retire until it's 67 or 69. Nice. But this feature, it's, yep, that will make at least 675 people or bots very happy. Next, from the N, we go to the outliner. The outliner has two very small commits that will help with making things a bit more clear, because they're when some elements cannot be edited, and Blender will just basically not let you do it, or basically let you do it but not do it. Now it actually tells you, hey, you cannot edit it. And right after this commit, the warning was rewarded to something more easy to understand, like it's not an editable name, or sequence names are not editable from the outliner. Just small little hints. So thank you, Julian, for making Blender more clear. Okay, now time to talk about the real-time compositor, also known, well, soon to be also known as the one and only compositor to rule them all. There will be fallback, but eventually it will be the only one that will be faster. And you know what? It's not fast usually. It was the Kuwahara filter that makes things look painterly. Now it is real time, and it even this commit adds anisotropic Kuwahara. What does it mean? Let's look at the pictures and just be amazed by the looks of this filter. Again, if you don't know what this filter does, it makes the picture painterly, and it was one of the requests from the studio people from the studio website, people that are working on the project Gold, which is not even announced here. But okay, if you go to the blog, you will see in the blog that there is a Project Gold. There you go. It's one of the requests for the Project Gold and the upcoming Blender Open Movie project. Okay, back to the actual feature. It was somewhere here. There you go. So this is the original picture. It's not a render. This was the CPU, and now this is the GPU. Yes, it looks very different because now the GPU has an option for sharpness, and with this you can control. You can, if you set different sharpness levels, you can get 0 sharpness, 0.5, and 1 sharpness, and it looks so cool. It makes it look like, I don't know, like this. Like making this in 3D would be a pain in the arm, in your hand for sure, for clicking so much. It's amazing. The next comparison has different eccentricity levels. It makes it a bit AI-ish in a way. You know, when you see too much, when something looks very AI, it has these filters on top of it. Makes it similar. So this is, on the left is 0, on the middle is 0.5, on the way all the way to the right is the eccentricity at 1. Kind of preserves more of the details. And here is one more example. Then, oops, not this one, but this one. The little on the left is the default, and then it becomes more and more AI-ish. Painterly look. It looks so cool. I love it. But you know what is actually the coolest of this is that when animated, it's actually stable. So let me shut myself down up here so you can actually look at this. Left is the original video. It's not a render. This is applied on just a regular video, and on the right you can see the detail being preserved on an animation. So it's actually not noisy as opposed to some denoisers that are really noisy in animation. Wow, even when the out of focus grass goes on front, it actually looks correct. It doesn't. Damn. I wanna zoom in this video. I think you're gonna be missing some of it, but so cool. Good job, Omar, for implementing this. It is pretty. Air Gear asks, what is this? This is a filter that it's available in the compositor of the latest Blender. Actually, if you go to the compositing nodes, use nodes, output, filter, Uahara, all the way down here. So cool. Anisotropic, and this is the one that I was showing. Also, if you're here, remember that you can enable from experimental, you can enable the experimental compositors under prototypes, and then you can choose from the options, execution, and you can toggle between full frame and real-time GPU. So cool. So cool. Real-time GPU, again, this should be just GPU, not real-time. Things when things are not real-time and they're called real-time, then it gets confusing. So thanks, Omar, for working on that. And after working on that, actually he made a fix that if you have been doing compositing in Blender, you probably run into this as well. Some of the nodes would not work anymore after you use a specific what? after you use a specific node, like it would like return black, depending on the image that you're using. And that was, I thought that was just a limitation. That's just the way things work. But you know, sometimes you are making edits and then you realize, okay, these nodes don't work together. You can do a transform after doing you can book a blur on a transform image, for example. And that limitation was lifted 3 days ago by Omar. This patch adds support for the realization of transformations of operation inputs in the real-time compositor. Input socket declarations can now include a preference to what sort of realization needs to happen. Nice. Improved. You know what else was improved? In rendering. Actually, this render, because it applies to everything. It's the default roughness distribution on shaders is now going to be on the glass, glossy, and principal BSDF is now going to be multi-scatter GTX instead of the regular GTX. This is because it's much more energy preserving, it looks better, and also it's not as slow as it used to be. Back then, when this was introduced, it was slower than the regular GTX, so that's why it wasn't made default. But now, after some improvements that were done a couple of months ago, this can be this can run by default. You know what else it used to be by default in the theme? So have you ever run into, well, it could happen if you had a certain kind of hardware or drivers or old drivers or broken computer, or well, Blender, since Blender 3.0 came with a vignette gradient, so a radial gradient in the background of the 3D viewport by default. This would help in like to tell apart this, to give more depth, to improve maybe visibility of some items around the screen, because the center would be slightly lighter, and around the text, the info text, the icons on the right, around it would be slightly darker, so actually more contrast. So with that in mind, it was turned on by default. However, apparently some hardware or even drivers wouldn't like this as much. Also, if you're making videos on like tutorials on YouTube, the gradient that you would get when saving a video, if the video wasn't really high quality, you would get like some banding in the background of the viewport. So for that reason, this was removed. It was changed. The default was changed to be not a gradient, but a single color for the background. You can always change it. So the difference now is that the viewport is same color everywhere, so it's flat everywhere. And you can change this if you prefer the old method to go, well, this is how it looks now. And if you prefer how it looked in the past, you go to 3D viewport, down to theme space, then gradient colors, and here you change to vignette if you want. Or you can also use linear gradient, for example. This is what some other software that starts with M, with a big M, and ends with Aya has it by default, I think. Yes, yeah, they do that. So now Blender has no gradient by default in the theme, but you can always theme it. From the letter T, we go to the U for UI, and here there are some really serious improvements. Okay, so 2 of them are only for Windows, unfortunately. So I'm not gonna be able to demo it here, but one of them is the allow eyedropper outside of Blender, and this is better seen with an actual image. So now from Blender on Windows only, you can select colors, you can pick colors from outside of the Blender window. So you can pick from the desktop image if you want, or from GIMP, or from other software, from any software, from the web even. So pretty neat. Unfortunately, this is not available for Linux or Mac OS. This kind of features are very hardware dependent. No, sorry, like operating system dependent. So in this case, for example, Harley implemented this feature, and I don't know if he has access to an Apple computer or Mac OS in order to test this, but also he's not maybe familiar with that, so it's better to leave it to the people that maintain the platform. And yeah, although it could be tested, but yeah, it's better if some people that are familiar with the platform implement it on the other operating systems. There is a few other features that are like this, like the copy paste. Unfortunately, copy paste of images is only Windows, and the next one, it's only Windows, but it makes sense that it's only Windows because only Windows has quick access items on the file browser system list. Now these entries are now part of the system list. On Windows, you have this in the how do they call it, the file browser. They have this list of quick access items that includes both internal folders and system folders, plus the ones that you add manually. And now these are all going to be in the same list. Next, this was a feature request that some people asked for the color picker to be slightly bigger. And well, basically the request was to make it customizable. Well, it was to make it bigger. So there was a patch to make it bigger, both bigger and customizable in the user preferences. After some discussion, having a whole new preference just to set the default size of the color picker was a bit much. This should be something that you resize and it just stores that value, right? Why would you have to go and add a new setting? So in that case, it was tested the way to make it. There was a way to make it resizable. However, it didn't work as we wanted, as good as we wanted, and that has to do with limitations on the UI kit that Blender has, the built-in layout system. So unfortunately, that feature didn't make it in. The patch is still open for somebody that wants to pick it up, and the color picker was done bigger, 33% bigger, just to because we all agree that actually the picker is a bit too small by default. Now it is slightly bigger. Next, another change that was done based on user feedback is that in Blender 3.0, the order of the menu entries, the toolbar and the header, was flipped because based on user feedback. Well, also based on hierarchy, it looks better. It feels better if the top is the header and then you have the toolbars closer to where the tool stuff happen, where you use the tool, right? So that's why it was flipped. However, the transparency of the header of the toolbar could be tweaked, and the header could not be tweaked. That was hard-coded to be fully opaque. And based on some feedback from the community, it's better to have it that you can actually change this. Now you can go to the 3D viewport, tweak the theme header transparency, and now the whole header can be made transparent as opposed to only the where was this? Well, this should have been mentioned somewhere. There was an issue, like an actual task, not an issue, where this was mentioned. We reported. This is a very small one. Some preferences were added to there was recently a new preference added to the preferences to the interface. No, wait, editing. To the node editor settings, like the preview resolution was added, and this preview resolution was added on top next to the offset margin, and these two were actually in the miscellaneous panel. So when you have more than 1 or 2 features, it makes sense. And also the node editor is used for so many things nowadays in Blender that it makes sense to give it its own panel. But now in preferences editing, you will find a new panel, node editor, where all preferences for the node editor will sit. It's only a UI change, it's a very small one. Another very small change, but it's a welcome one. It's when you when trying to perform some screen operations and maybe the area is too small, or you can't really perform a transformation in the screen in the editor sizes. Now Blender is going to tell you about it. It's going to, hey, I cannot resize because there is a narrow vertical area that interferes, or an horizontal area. So nice for feedback. Thank you, Harley. And the last change this week has to do with the U4USD. USD has now support for importing skeleton and blend shapes, also known as armature and shape keys in the Blender world. Super nice. Basically add support for USD skeleton animation import. You can import animation in Blender, USDs. Awesome. So yeah, not much to say other than thank Michael Kowalski for working on this. And there is also, this was attached to a bug report from last month that Blender USD doesn't import animation. Cool, awesome. Animation, USD. Apparently the future for many. That is all. I don't think I have much to say. I have a note. Oh yeah, well this week, I mean, I'm done with the features for today actually, so just like to mention that we started, like, this is more of a personal note slash developer note, that the modules, right, have a bunch of meetings, but not every few weeks. There is every couple of weeks or every week for some modules have the bigger meeting, like the organization meeting. And we started doing that with the user interface module as well a couple of weeks, 4 weeks back. And we had one last week, and we shared the news about that, about the results. So the first couple like the notes from the meeting that we had were more on trying to go back into some of the backlog and the big features for 4.0. So what you see is a list of features that were or the patches that were in the backlog, and this will be visited again next week. But it's super nice to be able to be doing this again. One of the features though, one of the patches though, we need some user feedback here. So there is a patch that it says that improves the statistics overlay in the 3D viewport. In the viewport, when you let me show you in Blender right here, that when you have an object, selected, it shows you, well, when you are in object mode, it shows you the total vertices for all the objects right here. When you have an object selected, it shows you how many objects are selected out of the total. But that doesn't happen. It only happens for the topmost info. It doesn't happen for the rest of the statistics. So this patch, what it does, it's exactly that. Basically, when you have nothing selected, nothing changes. Basically, all the items, all the stats are based on the total that you have selected. But now this patch makes it so when you have some object selected, it will show the total of the vertices, edges, faces. So the stats for the selected objects. The feedback is, so at first this sounds amazing. However, when the numbers get a bit too large, like you have a few million vertices, and if you want to show the long, well, I guess if you have so many vertices, you probably, if you can handle that many vertices, you probably have a more than HD or at least full HD screen. So maybe you can fit all those numbers. The reason I'm asking for feedback here is like, do you think this should be the way to go? Should it be an option? Let's hope not, because the less options the better. And the not the less options the better, but like if we can avoid having options and just make it work always how it would be the best way for everyone, then better. Actually, now that I look at it, it's not too bad. The text is rather small. It's in the corner of the screen. I guess if you have millions of vertices, you will see the numbers getting a bit long. Like here we're gonna make use of many more. I don't know. Or at some point we should just show like in number of like 100k, and then have an option to show the short version of the numbers when it's over 1,000 or over 100,000. I don't know. Let me know. Yeah, somebody mentioned here can collapse like 2.1k and 8.2 millions. Yeah, that is one way. But although sometimes you want to have very like granular, you want to know if like you have a 1,222,000 and 1,221,000, right? You want to know exactly, just to debug the scene. But then maybe you can change that in the preferences to be like a precise number or rounded number. Anyway, let's see what are people asking here. Let's try to answer. How are we on time? Is 10 minutes to 6. Let's do 10 minutes of questions. Actually, it's only 13 comments, so maybe I managed to go through all of them. Let's start by the first one by Nabnabnab. Nice to meet you at the conference at the SIGGRAPH LA, by the way. Thanks for dropping by the booth. Sometimes we get people at the booth, Blender users at the booth, that come to say hi and end up being like part of the booth because they help answering questions from other people that come with questions to the booth. So thank you to all of you that have involuntarily volunteered to be at booths on the conferences at SIGGRAPH, NEC, and others. So thank you all. A matter for my throat, and the question goes as follows. I was curious, thought about it after SIGGRAPH. Simulation nodes are going to be the way to transfer data from one simulation to another, but also to have simulations affect material and surface data. All things considered, textures are a very good way to store object surface data. Is anything being done to use textures as an interchange format, perhaps baking image sequences to textures in geometry nodes? Texture paint, geometry nodes version. We're gonna need all the data interchange methods for sim nodes to truly become omnipotent. I think for many cases it makes sense, right? If you want to have like some kind of flow maps or directional maps, like everything has to do with maps, you want to bake that. So I would say yes. I don't know if they are working on it at the moment, but I absolutely agree with it. Mohamed says, hi Pablo, hope you're doing good. I am. Well, I don't know if I'm doing good, I'm doing well, and I hope to do good with these live streams. Thank you, Mohamed. I've got a question. Is it possible to drag and drop materials into the geometry node just like we do with objects? I don't know, but that sounds like one of those things that maybe not too hard to, well, I say as a non-developer, but a material. Let's see. Can I drag and drop? If I select an object that has a material, can I drag and drop it? Oh no, you can't. But hey, this sounds like a very... Wait, I think I even tried to do this myself at some point, because there is... Okay, if you want to give this a try, not talking to you directly, but as in any you of developers, there are a few commits that were done in the past to to make this possible. For example, I know that you can drag and drop a collection because I asked for it. And when I looked at the commit for this change, it was very, very small and something that it could be done by really anyone with time to actually figure it out, and maybe some experience. But maybe this would be a good. It was also done for objects, and it was also done for textures, I think. Adding it for materials shouldn't be too hard. So if you're inspired, please give this a go. Go to developer.blender.org, and here you can find the documentation on how to build Blender, the introduction, some code design. But really, just going to the commit, trying to find the commit that added this. And you can maybe look for, like, in quotes, maybe add node collection, and then in the commits logs, and then you're gonna find the commit that adds it, or like look at the operator, and then maybe we get the blame the line, so you probably know. But maybe that would be one way. Let's see. Next change. Is it here? Can you check it out and see if it's a good idea? It's definitely a good idea. We should have drag and drop for everything that it can be dragged and dropped. Glenn says, well, let me upvote these things. Will it be possible to drag material in Blender 4.0? Okay, this is something I don't think we should, like the title maybe could be rewritten. So, because this is a proposal, you're submitting an idea, and a question is, it's an idea, but it's not, the idea title should be like, add drag and drop materials in geometry nodes. That's it. Doesn't have to specify a version, doesn't have to say anything. It's like, also doesn't have to be like, why is it not possible to do it? Like, that answer is usually because no one implemented it. You don't have to say like, why is it not possible that we can do this but not this? The answer is usually just nobody implemented it most of the time, especially for this kind of things, like drag and drop. Anyway, enough ranting. Next. Glenn says, wait, let me guess. Without looking at it, is that something related to lines? Let's see. Thank you for talking about my comment. I don't know how to get the current icons for the left tool panel from the source code. Oh, actually a development question. I'll put an image of the new draw mode tool palette, which would include grease pencil, lines, shapes, and a mesh line in right-click select. It would also be nice if shapes drawn from the new draw menu tool palette were inserted when we click where we want on the grid, instead of just dropping shapes in the middle of the screen as they do now, as we always have to move them. Some of these questions are maybe a bit too specific to start reading like out of the blue when I'm like reading all kinds of topics in the questions. So where are the current icons stored so I can use them if possible? It will make a sample tool palette. Do you have SVGs we can edit? What kind of icons though? Because there are multiple. Actually, I can send you to a very nice page that I started writing some time ago. Let's see if it's in style. Getting started. Let's just look for icons. It's a page called icons. There you go. Human interface guidelines, icons. Not this. It's another page of here, source interface icons. This page explains everything you need to know about icons in Blender. Which one is the main icon sheets, the Blender icons SVG. Then there is alert icons, file browser icons, brush icons, geometry icons, the ones that you see on the sidebar. These are actually Blender. The other ones are images, and the other ones are, the default ones are SVG. They can be found in the Blender icons SVG of the source file. Also, can I use ChatGPT to make code? Also, any good prompts? But you can use ChatGPT to make anything, right? I think you would end up with maybe something usable. Although remember that ChatGPT it has to learn from you, right? Sometimes you may get code that doesn't work and you have to tell it, hey, it doesn't work, and then it's gonna say, oh, sorry, and then it tries something else. And but you can also go to ask the community for feedback in development in the forums. Actually there is a chat room here. Not that bad. Thank you for replying. Finn says, hey Pablo, you mentioned for the smooth modifiers a few weeks ago. Have you looked at this? Have a great day. No, I have not. What is this? UI, improve smooth modifiers layout. Nice. So it's a new layout for... Nice. No, I will give feedback. Thank you. I'm added as a reviewer. So I should have given feedback. Sorry. Thank you. Let's see. Thing is a copy paste from preview. From the preview live streams, previous live stream. Hi Pablo, I hope to see sculpting texturing updates in the near future. I hope. Any hope? Yes, all the hope. If I have to go for hopes, all the hopes. And sculpting texturing updates in the near future. Well, performance has been a big thing, and I think the patch for the dynamic topology will be at least investigated by other developers that should push that one forward. Remember the project to make dynamic topology support custom attributes? That one, I think, is the one we can hope for soon. And texturing, we all want texturing. Or maybe 2024 is going to be the year of texturing, hopefully. Right? Like 2024 will be a world where we have light linking, we have asset shelf, we have everything that we have at the moment, right? So, and Grease Pencil 3 and EEVEE next. So it's about time we give some texturing love. Next see, what is it? 6? It's 6 o'clock. Let's see if we can do maybe 5 more questions. Hey Pablo, another Monday and another Blender today. Always nice to see. I'm a bit curious how it works with bug reports and priorities. For example, there is this bug with bevel that destroys UV. In short, some UV faces gets moved to other shells where it doesn't belong. There's this bug that destroys UV. I personally found this bug a couple months ago at work when we made a bug report, but it got closed and referenced as a 3-year-old bug report, but doesn't contain everything in my report, and haven't barely been touched at all. Yes, I know that bevel is getting an overhaul sometime soon. PM, maybe by someone that's not working full time, but this is just an example of one among other bugs I've both done and seen that is really breaking but doesn't get any attention for years. For me, it is quite frustrating, so I'm just curious how and why some bugs might get attention and fixed quite fast while others don't. Well, without even looking at the bug, I'm gonna look at it now, but without even looking at it, some bugs are in areas of Blender that are being maintained like every day or very often by people that are very responsive. That would be my answer. Some of the bugs maybe are very easy to fix, so maybe the developers are on top of them, and there's like, you know, every developer has a section in Blender that is like their baby and they want to make it like the best and bug free and everything. There are other areas that are orphan, basically. They're abandoned. They don't have a mom or a dad. They are just there, and unfortunately some areas in Blender are like that. This one, let's see, bevel breaks UV and other things. So let's see the closing. Thanks for the report. This has been reported twice. Please subscribe for receiving further updates. So this has been reported as an assignee Howard, and Howard should be getting notifications every time something new is referenced, but again, that developer is the one working on that area and is not around as much because it's not working full time for Blender. I'm sorry. I hope that every week that I do a live stream like this, I try to get in at least some kind of impact on developers or want to be developers out there that maybe listen to my sad voice and your sad message about lonely orphan areas in Blender that can be adopted. You know, like there is adopt a animal, a pet, a person, you know, or you can be you're the godmother of a feature. The same way, if someone is looking and you want to take over some of these orphan features, please go ahead. Or at least look at the status of the feature, and maybe even try to help. I mean, I shouldn't say this, but maybe if I am taking care of one area in Blender and I couldn't work on it because of X reason, and someone else tries to work on it, maybe that will motivate me to like, hey, oh, someone else actually is trying to, you know, work on it or improve it. Maybe I should actually get back to, and instead of sleeping every night for 6 hours, 7 hours, maybe you can just not sleep for a few weeks. It's really completely unhealthy, but we will end up with a feature. I don't know. Just I would also like to see this fix. Prince of Sloth asks, I love you and I love the Blender Foundation. That is all. Thank you. Ciao. Alright, I love Prince of Sloth and that you are part of the Blender Development Fund. Thank you. Thank you and everybody that supports the Blender Development Fund, because that is what actually keeps the developers that can work full-time actually hire full-time. Hey, we're 3,199 individuals. Who's gonna make it 200? Awesome. Anyways, next question. Let's do 2 more and then I wrap up. Dandybot says, hello Pablo. Is there any news regarding the modeling tools? I feel that compared to other 3D packages, there are certain tools that need to be improved and others that need to be implemented because they are so convenient. Example of this is a multicut from Cinema 4D. Any news regarding the development of more robust retopology tools? Unfortunately, not that I know. We did hire at some point someone that was related to retopology tools, and didn't. Well, there were some changes done in the API of Blender, but not really on the actual tools that much. And I don't know if maybe that didn't work out back then. I don't know the status of it, but yeah, that's another area that needs some love. And there was some love given to that area regarding the overlays. Remember, Blender 3.6 or 3.5 introduced a new overlay for retopology, but it wasn't. But that's it. Like the tools themselves, they hasn't been improved. So another area that needs love and attention by developers like you. And the last one, actually the last one from the page. Hey Pablo, I hope you're having a nice day. I am, although it's a bit warm and I'm drinking basically boiled water with grass, so not helping. Hi Pablo, hope you're having a nice day. I may ask, what is the status with the layer texture designs? The layer texture design is still valid, although it's 2.5 years old. Wait, no, 1.5 year old. Gonna be at least 2 years until it gets visited and revisited next year. But the concept, I think, is still largely valid. Maybe now with more geometry nodes involvement, maybe some of these things should be improved, but I think it's still valid. I think we should try to see how this would work applied in the current Blender. Their interface, they're like, some of the changes here proposed back then, they were like too ahead of its time. It's like things we couldn't do in the UI in Blender. But actually the layer stack, for example, we do have some new lists elements that we could use for this UI. And one thing that was a bit worrying for me was the layers. How do we show layers in the layer texture designs? How do we make it visually, you know, easy to understand? And there is a project called Graphite thing.rs that it's an open source project. If you don't know it, you should know it, and you should. It's an open source project made by Blender users, and it's just amazing. It's a web tool that you can use, for example, like you would use Inkscape, or like you would use, like you can do vector graphics, but also raster at the same time. You can have like layers on one side, and everything that you do in this user interface is actually also being built as node. So everything you do becomes nodes, and it's still in a very early state. Well, actually you can just launch it from here. You can use it directly, and you'll see that some of these menus, they look very familiar to Blender, because they are Blender users, and I actually really love that they are doing this. They have this approach. Actually, you can move things. You can move things with G, rotate with R, and scale with S even. So it's ideal for Blender users, and it's open source. So you should give it a try. It's very early state though. Just saying. What else? I think I'm done. I'm covered, and it's 10 past 6 o'clock, so it's a good moment to wrap it up. How are you all in the chat? Sorry, to fit more things in the screen, I put you aside on another screen monitor, so I might have missed some of these comments over here. Hope you're doing great. I am doing great, but I think I was looking at the calendar of my job at Blender, and this week I think most people are away on holidays, because it's summer holidays in this side of the world. In the northern hemisphere is in summer, so many people are taking holidays. Development is gonna slow down a bit, so I think better to focus. But also it's a good thing I'm not going on holidays this during the summer here, because I usually go in the summer in Argentina, which is in December. So that gives me some free time. Well, free time, less busy time with other Blender projects, and gives me a bit more time to focus on the Blender development side of things, like the UI, module updates. So I think I would rather focus on that this week, and maybe a bit of next week. So since there won't be any more many development updates anyway, because holidays, how about we meet again, not next week, but the week after? I would say that it's actually the 4th of September. Next week it's 28th, and the next one is the 4th of September, and that will have definitely more features and new updates to talk about. So let's meet again, definitely at the same time, not in 1 week, in 2 weeks, on the 4th of September, unless something weird happens. Stay tuned to social media. By the way, Instagram, do you know anybody that works at Instagram? For some reason, or Meta, for some reason they disabled the Blender account, the official Blender account, and I have no idea why. Maybe it was we uploaded the real video that maybe had music that wasn't clear. We bought that music, but I don't know. We didn't get any warning. It was just like boom, cancel, disable. Over 300,000 people following the Instagram account. It's just gone, kaput. So we are thinking of either opening a new account and starting from scratch, or just not opening anything and just, I don't know. What do you think we should do? We should probably be there. But there's people that made the Blender Foundation account, the Blender org account, Blender.org account for some reason. So we don't even have access to those nice usernames anymore, because people make accounts called Blender.org for some reason. So what should we do? If you know anybody that works there and maybe can help us to get the account back. That would be pretty neat. I don't think I know anyone, but only on the development side of things. Other than that, see you. And we're on Mastodon as well, so open source for the win. But you know, Instagram is still pretty well used, and people tag Blender when they use it, so it's good to be there as well. I will see you again. Stop ranting. Watch out your ear holes, because in 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Alright, I'm gonna listen with you. Alright, thanks everybody. I'll see you again in 2 weeks, same place, same time, for another episode of Blender Today live.